the assertion that we're a monopoly. If we are, it's not because we're rubbish.
Dance Music Secrets with Kevin Mackay.
Welcome to Dance Music Secrets. Today's guest is Alex Branson, SVP of Industry Partnerships at Beatport. Before working at the world's largest DJ store, Alex worked his way up from the mailroom to senior roles at licensing, distribution, consultancy, and management. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me. Quite the introduction.
Cheers. I want to start with something that will be very close to our viewers' hearts, and that's career guidance. As someone who's worked at all levels in the industry, what do you think are the key traits or the key things that have seen you well in the industry and that other people should look to emulate?
It all started out of curiosity for me.
Right.
I was a classically trained musician, was in a rock band, and I was very curious as to how money was made when something was played on radio, because it was that intangible sort of element of the music industry. And that's honestly where it began. And when I was at school, I managed to, through a bit of harassment, meet a music publisher, and I started to learn about what that was. And that just really sort of just fascinated me enough for me to then realize that there was this whole industry around this art form that I was enjoying playing around as a kid at. So the curiosity has always stayed with me. It stays with me every single day.
Right, okay.
And without that, I think I would just get bored and move on. But I'm genuinely fascinated. So whether it's technology or the inner workings of copyright law, it doesn't really matter. To me, it fascinates me.
But that curiosity alone can't have been enough to keep you in an industry that is, I mean, it's cutthroat, this industry. It's hard to stay in. There are always people younger than you looking to steal your job, as far as I can.
Thanks for that reminder. Yeah.
Well, look, I think
that's okay.
I think we're both
amongst friends.
I think we're both of a similar sort of vintage. So
indeed,
I'm just speaking for personal experience. Maybe it's different for you. I don't know. Let's ask you. Do you feel that?
You're spot on.
Yeah,
you're spot on. And I think if I look back to how I got into the industry, which is often a question people ask themselves, like, how on earth do I get into it? We just had a question from one of your colleagues here about a particular role at Beatport. And so I have two sort of moments that I think are a good way of explaining my character and who I am. And they stay with me every day like curiosity does. I got my first gig in the mailroom at Sony because I was at university and I was helping a former student load his keyboards into the back of his car on a Friday night. Everybody else had gone down the pub, but I was really interested in MIDI. I wanted to know how MIDI worked, right? And so he was just sort of talking to me, and a lecturer came around the corner and he went, "Oh, you're looking for work experience?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been on at this guy for like a year." And he went, "Right, you start at Sony on Monday." That genuinely was it. And when I was at Sony, the reason why I stayed at Sony after this sort of short period of time was I was sitting with Sam Winwood, Moff Winwood's son, in NS2. I'd been there for a day and a half because I'd just been put into a placement because they were short of people. It was my very last day at Sony, and we were putting, and this will age me, putting VHS cassettes into sleeves for promo run. Again, late on a Friday, the rest of the company had gone home pretty much. And then Elias, one of the product managers at the time, came out and he went, "You've been great today. Can you come back?" And genuinely, amazing. I believe that those are sort of those sliding doors moments that they don't exist because somebody hands them to you on a plate. I didn't want to leave that day. That was my last day at Sony. And it led to, a year plus at Sony before I got headhunted and moved on, and sort of the career went from there, really. But I think that wish to be in it, that real need, and again, it comes back to that curiosity. That's why I'm still relevant to this day. And yes, there's a lot of young, very smart people coming into this industry, and that's fantastic. But I think, I have the advantage of a bit of experience now.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. From those two answers, like an intense curiosity and a work ethic, a strong work ethic,
exactly.
And then a little bit of being in the right place at the right time. Is there anything else you can sort of think of? Or for me, if I'm looking at people coming to work for me, they are two very, very good pointers.
Yeah, I don't do this to make loads and loads of money. Right?
Yeah.
My reason.
That is another good reason not to care about having a massively high salary.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, I have been very lucky in my later years. I have managed to, put a roof over my head, etc. But I didn't do it for that. I could have worked in finance or something like that. I'm smart enough to do things like that, but I didn't, and it's because I love music. I was a musician, and I've been fascinated by an ever-changing business ever since. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of just all of those types of things, really.
And from what you've seen kind of from the mailroom and to those senior roles, what are some behaviours that people should be cautious or should be sort of wary of, or things that they might need to work on if they know they're that type of person? What might they need to work on? What negatives have you seen, or maybe things that don't apply to you that you've been glad don't apply to you?
Yeah, well, I think and this is a very broad generalization, so please bear with me. But my observation of having worked in both major record companies, so both Sony and Warner, and I've worked very closely with a lot of people at Universal because they were one of the early investors in Ingrooves, which is a company I work for. In those large organizations, the people that do very well there are very good at channeling a lot of energy into their specific area of operation. Okay. I'm a generalist. I am interested in all of it. And so I don't always fare so well in those kind of opportunities, should we say, because I want to get involved with everything. And I find in those larger structures, they're not really built that way.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody has their sort of fiefdom that they kind of exist and control. And so, and not saying that entrepreneurial spirit doesn't exist in those companies. It does, of course. But I think the indie side of the business, just to give it, again, that very generalization, works much better for somebody like me because I'm more useful to everybody. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. But
so just having, if you're interested in doing multiple things, if you don't want to just be in a box, if you don't want to just do marketing or just do A&R, if you want to have a wider role, if you know as a person you'll get bored by those sort of strict blinkers, maybe don't go and work in a major record label. Maybe think about something a bit more, a company that's got a bit more, where the roles are a bit looser.
And I think you can cut your teeth in an indie and say a marketing role. Of course, you'll be given much more visibility as to sort of the soup to nuts process of a campaign. Whereas if you work for a larger organization, you might find that you sort of just get stuck in like a social media element of the whole campaign. You actually get to see the whole thing. Again, guessing slightly at that.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I just think it depends on what it is that you want to do. Some people, I tell you what, a good marketing person is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
A good operations person is worth their weight in gold. A good lawyer is worth their weight in gold. All of those kind of specialities. If you're really, really good at them, you can have an amazing career. Whether you're in an indie or a major. Majors for earning the big salaries, probably. An indie for a broader kind of view on things. I don't have any of that. I'm not an A&R person. I'm not a marketing person. I'm none of these things. And so I think you. I don't know if you just asked me or not, but like maybe like some of the things I maybe wish I'd done better.
No, it's not that. I think it's very good. It's know yourself, and if you know that you're the type of person that wants to specialize, then there are certain roles within the music industry that are great for you. Yeah. But if you're not, if you're the type of person who is curious and always looking to who's not looking to specialize or has got a wider interest, then maybe choose different roles. I think it's great advice. I wanted to, because you've worked for quite a long time in distribution, I wanted to move on to another subject which should be close to our listeners' hearts, which is getting their music out there. And I always advise artists that they should own a percentage of their catalogue and be in control of a percentage of their catalogue, and therefore they need distribution. What do you think to that idea? Do you believe that that's true? And what do you think to that idea?
Yeah, I think you can. History's a great device for shortcutting learning, and I think if you look at the people that have been successful, and they may well own their own label now, like yourself, but I think it depends on what your approach is and what you actually want to try and achieve. I think there's a lot of cachet in if you're trying to establish a brand, like brand equity in your artist name, releasing on a successful label like yourselves is a really good shortcut to building audience around your artist brand.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of a mix here. I think
Yeah, I mean, I always say, like, it's maybe not an 80-20 thing, but there's probably like there's probably a good split where you leverage.
Yeah, I guess where I'm kind of going with this is that there's been a lot of over the last 15 years or so talk about DIY distribution companies or independent artist distribution companies. And whilst I think they have a lot of validity in the marketplace, and it's amazing what they've done to democratize that piece of it, the narrative has been own everything, don't ever give anything away, don't share, don't play with your mates, right? And I just think that's bad advice.
I I agree. Well, there's been some artists that have refused. As a record label, we build catalogs, so we own the recording. We don't stop them performing another version of the same song in a relatively short period of time. But for that specific recording, we want to own it. That's ours. That's what a record label, to my mind, that's what a record label does. And some artists will just come and go, nope, I refuse to give any of my copyrights away. I want to, at some point, get the copyright back, and I will not deal with you if we don't do that. And I think it's short-sighted.
I really do think so. I think, the people will often point to the sort of the Taylor Swift style, scenario that she found herself in. That's a very different thing. It's a completely different thing. If you ever get to that level, great, right? But when you're starting out, okay, I'm going to wind back a little bit. I think all of the advice should always begin with what's your intention?
Yeah.
What do you want to achieve? And you can get really granular when it comes to things like marketing campaigns. Like, what do you actually want to achieve? More followers, more sales, more streams, whatever. So what do you actually want to do? Do you want to build a long-lasting artist career, or do you really believe that the first record that you made ever is going to be the biggest record of all time? Because if it is, then you should probably own all of that, right? To maximize your, because the record's just that good.
Yeah.
You and I both know that it's a bit of a longer path than that typically. Yeah. All right, these days you might have a viral hit, sure, but that's not a plan. That's a happenstance.
Yeah, it's winning the lottery.
100%. Yeah. So I think if you genuinely believe that you have the chops and tenacity and grit to make it as an artist in this industry, just do whatever you can to build that audience. And I would always talk about. Yes, you can build audience on socials, but you don't own that relationship, right? Do whatever you can to actually own that relationship.
Absolutely.
And once you've got that audience, I'll tell you what, you'll be way more attractive to record companies that want to sign your records. And of course, it then enables you to actually run your own label and then build your career on your own.
There'll be some labels that were like, we can't, unless the record is, One More Time levels or Bohemian Rhapsody levels, or kind of when an A&R hears it and they go, like the first time I heard Milo's Drop the Pressure, I'm like, okay, yeah, he's maybe going to be the next Daft Punk.
Sure.
That record is that good.
Yeah.
But unless you hear that, it's just another good record. So how do you, some labels just won't take it on. It's just another good record. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of good records released every week. How are you going to make yourself different? You've got no audience.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we bought a company called Label Radar to assist in this process, because I think if you're in the studio and you're making your first couple of records, you have no audience, you have no concept of either an artist brand or a made up label brand to launch this career on. And I've seen some people do some really cool stuff on socials to build audience in a different way, and it's not music first. It's maybe funny sketches or something, and they sort of then layer in their music, and that's their path. I think that's that young kid smart thing that we were talking about earlier, maybe. But Label Radar is a great way of just putting your music in a very pure way of like, is it a good record or not?
Yeah.
In front of every decent record label pretty much out there, and records get signed every single day on that platform.
I think it's a great platform. I think it's, but artists should definitely be looking at it.
But that one record being signed to mid-level label X isn't going to be the thing that catapults you into the stratosphere of success. It might be, but the likelihood is you need to do that 10, 15, 20, 100 times.
Yeah, I mean,
and have like mid-level success in a dance music version of that, right?
Yeah.
Until you build enough brand equity and trust in what you're doing.
I mentioned two records earlier on, like One More Time and Bohemian Rhapsody. Queen must have taken 12 years, 13 years to get to Bohemian Rhapsody. Daft Punk definitely took, I think 1993 was the first time I heard of them at Soma Records in Glasgow. The chat about this French double band, and then 2000 before One More Time comes out. It's a long, these are not, and just because distribution has been democratized and you can access people on socials, like you say, it doesn't change the time that it takes as an artist to develop to that level. Artists like Blondish, you look at them putting records out in 2013, and now they're a massive deal. But they've been releasing on high level record labels for a long time, 12 years.
Absolutely, they've really honed their craft, and along the way, and you need obviously a long period of time to have this happen. You will have got lucky in lots of different ways over that period of time. People you've met. Perhaps a particular person you supported as a DJ, if you're also a producer, that meets you, likes what you're about, and then plays one of your records purely because you were just supporting them in that particular gig.
Absolutely.
All of these things, right? And there's millions of them. But
completely.
You've got to keep going, keep trying.
So anyway, back to distribution. If artists have got to, I think it's important, or we've agreed that a percentage of their output would be good if it was on their own label, or they controlled a percentage of their output. What should they look out for in a distributor? What are the things they should look for?
It's part of the reason why we bought Amp Suite. We believe that dance music is made up of, it's probably the most fractured set of businesses, right? In terms of like genres out there, I think hip hop comes a sort of close second to that, because there's a lot of that sort of entrepreneurial spirit in that art form. And I think Amp Suite is not really just a distribution company; it's the full package. You can run a music company from it, because it does all your contracts, all your royalties, and all the rest of it. I think you've got to, but purely from a distribution point of view. And I guess just for the record I've worked in, I built Warner's independent artist distribution platform. I helped develop Ingrews, which then became Virgin Music. I've done this for a very long time. I was sort of at the beginning stages of all this. For example, I saw a big change happen when distributors went from just being pure supply to adding marketing sort of services, right? And that was in the sort of basic form of just pitching to DSPs. But these days, and then there was a period of time where everyone was like, oh, we'll do label services. Right? Remember that? And that became sort of fashionable. And then you sort of saw all these deals coming out into the marketplace and they looked and smelled like a distribution deal, but they were starting to edge closer towards a record deal where there was like more sort of like micro advances for parts of catalog or whatever it might be. I think it goes back to something I said earlier, like just like what is it you want to achieve? If you're starting out and you've not done anything at all, honestly, one of those turnkey DIY distribution platforms enables you to cut through all of the gatekeepers and just put the record up there.
Yeah.
Right? Sure. I would probably advise, if you really think the record's good, is try the things like the label radar route first. See if you can get somebody else to put it out for you.
Try and get some support and then build a story, take it to maybe a bigger distributor, one of the ones backed by a major, whether that's Orchard or ADA or or an indie one.
Yeah, Believe
Amp
these
Suite.
Days, absolutely.
Just so that everyone knows, Glasgow Underground uses Amp Suite for our record delivery and our royalty accounting. So maybe part of the reason why Alex is here. But we can personally vouch for Amp Suite.
Oh, thank you. And I think try and just remember that there's human beings on both sides of the negotiating table.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which distributor you're looking at. If you ever get to the point where you have a conversation with somebody, they're going to do the same thing that everybody else does. They're going to look at the proposition in front of them. So the deal that they offer you is based on what you're worth to them.
Yeah.
Right? It's just business. It's not meant to be crude and awful. It's just business. So from a distribution point of view, if, for example, you're chasing an advance because you need some capital to try and add fuel to the fire that you've already started in, say, on an organic way, cool, okay, go and find a distributor that might give you 10 grand, 15 grand, 20 grand. There are still some out there that will do that. I think on the same site, in the same breath, be very wary of somebody that is very quick to go, sure, there you go, there's 5 grand. they may not believe that you're going to make that back very soon. And part of their motivation, and I'm just going to put it out there, is that you're then locked into that deal until you can pay that money back. So if you think about it from their point of view, they've got contracts that now extend beyond the term. And if their motivation is to flip their company in a couple of years, you're going to be part of the collateral that's being passed on. That's a bit conspiracy theorist of me.
No, I think that's
I've seen it happen.
It's a great example of a red flag for me for distribution. If you have, so normally distribution contracts would range from, in my experience, from 12 months to 3 years. They're kind of short, and then they maybe go into, or they, in my experience, they've gone into kind of rolling contracts where you can terminate them every 6 months or every year, or there's a kind of point in the contract where you can go. However, if a distributor's given you an advance, then you're going to be, if you haven't paid that back, you either have to pay it back to get out of it, but sometimes you won't even be able to pay it back to get out of it. Sometimes you have to just earn the money. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, Alex, like you say, you're stuck in that deal for, it could be a long time, especially if you're putting out a single every 6 months and they've given you $5,000, but they think you're a talent. They basically own you. And for me, that's a red flag. What other red flags would you...
There is a company out there, at least one, that will remain nameless because they don't want to get sued.
No,
but they have a rather awful part in their contracts where you can sign up. Sure, they make that super easy. But if you want to take down any of your records, they will charge you, I think it's something like €30 a track.
Wow. So if you want to move them from a distributor, which you've now, because you've moved up in status, and you think, oh, I was paying this percentage, for me, just to give people an idea, I think 20% is a fairly average distribution fee. But again, you might get a quick distribution deal at 40% because the distributor's like, well, you've got no traction, mm-hmm. and you're not paying me a fee, so I'm going to take a massive chunk, and I'm going to hold you into this, and I'm going to make it very difficult for you to take your catalog down, and I'm going to keep earning 40% on you.
Yeah. So I guess read the contract.
Yeah.
is one of the things, but and look for those things. It's like any relationship. Is it forever? Probably not.
Yeah.
So think about that, and I think you've got on the same side. It is a relationship, and so therefore it's two-sided. Don't walk into every single negotiation saying, I only want to sign up for a 2-month contract. Nobody's going to give you that.
Yeah.
Because the mechanics of distribution is it takes a minute to ingest the catalog, takes a minute to send it out there, takes a minute for the royalties to come back in. So no one's going to give you a very, very short contract, because then what are they doing? It's just suicide for them as their business. So you've got to make some form of commitment to them. Just be very careful on making sure that if it doesn't work out, because they're just relationships, you can get out of it. I
think that's true. And your observation that distribution became more like a record label, I've seen that with a distributor that we worked with in the past, where they tried to have a clause which meant that we weren't allowed to license any of our catalog while it was under distribution to that entity, which means that if a major label came in, and one did come in, they wanted to license it on, and if we hadn't negated that clause, then we'd have been stuck there. And you'd have thought that because you were having a record that was so successful that a major label wanted to take it up a level, the distributor would then be equally interested, but that's not the case. Sometimes it's a personal decision on what they spend the company's efforts on, and even though one major label might think, oh, you've got a hit on your hands, your current distributor might go, we don't think you do have a hit on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's... Fortunately, folks now have the internet at their disposal, and you can do a lot of good Googling and ChatGPTing these days to work out what perhaps is in your contract. Certainly, distribution agreements are typically a very narrow grant of rights.
Yeah.
And so don't get too caught up on whether something's termed as exclusive or non-exclusive, but just look to see what is actually included in, say, that exclusive versus the non-exclusive. For example, I would expect that it would need to be exclusive for distribution, because otherwise you'd get a conflict if you tried to then send the same record to the same store through a different distributor. That's not going to work, right? So just be practical about
you end up with 2 copies on the store, and the DSPs don't like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, Beatport, it literally wouldn't work because we can't have the same label twice, right? But also, you can't have the there can only be one owner of a copyright, right? Pretty much, right, within the parameters of, say, territory or whatever. But things like sync, you could do that kind of ability for somebody else to license that on your behalf, but just do it as non-exclusive. Don't commit to an exclusive relationship on sync. Do exclusive on just narrow grant of rights for distribution. And as I say, it's just sort of be practical about what you're trying to achieve. And do you trust these people? If not, don't get into business with them. Like, seriously. Like, use your nous, use your gut feel. That's all relevant.
I think using ChatGPT is a good thing. You can definitely feed the contract in and ask it to pick up any red flags, stuff like that.
And you can normalize the questions, like how would I terminate? When could I terminate this agreement? It'll tell you.
Yeah. Great.
Or get a lawyer.
I'd like to move on to Beatport now. So as a DJ and a music producer, if you're not fascinated by the DJ stores, then I think you're in the wrong game. Beatport is the clear market leader in the DJ stores. What do you feel Beatport brings to the community, the dance music community, and what positive things have you seen since you've joined?
I mean, I've known Beatport since it first began, and we're 21 years old this year, and I've seen it evolve, over that time. And I think probably one of the most important things that we offer is for dance music in particular, away from kind of all the other genres, is a measurement of success that we can bring that isn't necessarily always obvious elsewhere. You're not going to necessarily make it into the pop charts, right? So it's quite difficult to understand and benchmark, your own success against your peers. And so our charts are very powerful. That's where a lot of focus, I think, for people is, both in terms of trying to get into the charts, but also once you are into the charts, how do you stay there? So we're about to add a feature where it'll be nice and easy to share your chart placement from the site, for example, but people are very used to screenshotting that and sharing it on socials, and we think that's
good though. I mean, we
think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, you're being judged by your peers through the art of sales. They are sales charts. If you're successful with your record and all your marketing campaigns, your promo and all the rest of it, you will make it into the charts because they're just sales charts. Nobody's tinkering with that stuff.
No. I mean, I don't think. I mean, you see. I mean, that's just conspiracy theory stuff. I don't think 100%. I don't want anyone thinks that. I mean, my understanding, they're just like a rolling 7-day accumulation of the
update every day.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I've talked to producers who say that it's really important for art producers' mental health to see some progress, and maybe not even starting on Beatport, starting in one of the less popular DJ stores and picking a kind of smaller space to start, but having success, see yourself move up, get that first number one, move on to Beatport, the biggest DJ store, try and get some success there. And that's, I think you must look at Hype as one of the best inventions or best changes that there's been in Beatport recently. And I think for me it's great. It allows new artists, it's a sort of second level of you explain it and explain how you feel about it and what you think.
So I was actually consulting for the company before I started full time to launch Hype. So the intentions, I assure you, are very pure. We realized that we had a little bit of a problem on our store because if you sort of go back to what I was saying, the charts are really important. And what you will often find is that the same record labels are having success in the charts. Why? It's really, very simple. They're bigger. They have more staff. They have bigger marketing budgets. And they have bigger addressable audiences, right? It's all the stuff we've kind of talked about already on the show. And so we were like, okay, how do we fix this? Because we, up until very recently, didn't have any form of personalization on the store whatsoever. And so it was all based on either curation and the charts, and that was how you had success. And of course, we'll get onto curation perhaps in a minute, but just stay with Hype. So Hype was designed to help and assist what we all know and understand. We talked about earlier in terms of being the most fractured amount of businesses in a genre. How do you help a young label have success? And if success is measured on our store, typically for dance music, how do we do that?
Yeah.
So we came up with Hype because we wanted to, and the $9.99 a month fee is purely just to filter out those that aren't that serious about their careers, because we think in terms of like investment in yourself, that's not very much. And it also then limits the amount that are in both the charts and for the curators to look through. the challenge with Beatport has always been the curation piece, and so the curators, they're human beings, right?
Yeah.
They're not robots, right? And they can only know what they know, and they are all working jobbing DJs. They will know the artists and the labels that they know. If they don't know you yet because you're new, you've got to find a way of getting to know them. And so we created Hype so that you could pay this very light fee, so that they absolutely had to listen to your record. They don't know your artist necessarily, and they don't know your label necessarily, right?
Right. Okay.
So, but this is a way of forcing the record into their ears.
And you have to kind of, there has to be a sort of barrier to entry otherwise, because how many tracks are you getting a day?
There's lots. I think it's about 30,000.
I mean, so the curators can't listen to everything, but if you're serious about your career, then, and also Hype, the Hypes are a separate chart. So for people that don't know, Hypes are a separate chart, and a label like Glasgow Underground can't get into the Hype chart because our turnover is too high.
You're too successful. I mean, quite frankly, good for you. You know?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, and it's the right thing. There should be places where like new artists get to develop, and from as an A&R resource for a label, it's great. You get to see the ones who are bubbling under the chart, essentially. Maybe not the ones on bigger labels, but it's just, nothing's perfect. But yeah, I think it's been a great addition to the store. And
I think if you sort of look at who our customer is, they're DJs, and I mean, you're a DJ.
Yeah.
What do you like to find? You like to find the record that nobody else is playing, right? That's really, really good. That's going to have the right reaction on the dance floor.
Yeah.
That's the art form.
You want to be first on it.
100%. So how do you find those records you've never heard of before by artists you've never heard? It's really tough. So we thought that was just a really good way of like kind of surfacing the people that were really serious about their careers, and so they were going to do that like low level investment in themselves, but it would surface it. And so, and of course, right, all of our charts are just sales charts, right? So the goal really, and the threshold that you've mentioned, which we don't publicize, I don't think, is really a sort of like the movement between having success on Hype, perhaps being number one, and then moving up into the top 100 on the main store. So that's our goal. We don't want people to stay in Hype forever. We want them to be the next Toolroom Defected Glasgow Underground, right?
Yeah.
So that's the intent, because if we don't do that and we don't invest in this, we die, right? As a store, we become irrelevant.
Yeah.
So everything that we do is all about nurturing the community that we're a part of.
I mean, some labels won't want to go there. They'll naturally sign records that won't get to the levels that a Toolroom Defected or Glasgow Underground, because we are signing records that we have to be looking to sign records that are going to the maximum number of DJs. And so there's a certain type of record that you sign when that's your aim, and some record labels will not want to do that. They'll just want to stay strictly underground. So but
there's a place for it all.
Yeah.
We have 34 genres for exactly that reason.
I think it's fair. I mean, I think what it does point to is that you are focused on being the very best DJ store out there, and some might say that your success is so great that you have almost a monopoly on that area. And obviously monopolies are generally seen by regulators as a bad thing. How would you answer that criticism?
It's a historical thing. So we're 21 years old. We are still to this day, the main thing that makes our money is downloads. I assure you, when I turn up at a panel at a conference and people go, "Oh, so what do you do?" and they're all talking about streaming and TikTok and all the rest of it, I go, "Yeah, we sell downloads." And they kind of look at you, go, "I'm sorry, what? People still buy those?" It's like, "Yeah, DJs," And so we're in a niche, right?
Yeah.
We're in a lovely niche, and it's quite a big niche, really. But we do one thing really, really well. We find and surface records, and we sell those downloads to the DJs. To the extent where I'll talk to label heads and DJs, and they will say, "You know what, your genre pages reflect my experience of the industry that I'm a part of, which is perhaps focused on that genre."
Yeah.
And that's a really good reflection of our success, and credit to our curation team, really.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of like, I mean, look, TrackSource exists, Juno exists. There are new entrants coming in, as a new one called Carbon, Volumo.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that we haven't deliberately gone out and just sabotaged everybody else's business.
No, I mean,
We've been around for so long. That's all.
No, I mean, they've just released the CDJ 3000X. You've got an ability to log on now as a DJ,
Absolutely.
but I can, I must, like 10% of the gigs I play, I've got CDJ 3000s. Most of them are still on CD 2000s. So the kind of, if you think if there's going to be another 10, 15 years really before equipment like that, and also Wi-Fi in clubs. How many clubs you go to that have got Wi-Fi? That whereas a DJ, you'd be confident.
Trust, yeah.
You'd be confident enough to go, yeah, I'm not picking my USB. I'm just going to log on to the internet and start playing off of a streaming service.
I mean, our pro tier does have the kind of what we call caching offline mode. So we recognize when we launched streaming this time around, because I believe a previous administration tried it before, we recognized the fact that this was going to be an evolutionary step.
Yeah.
And so that's why we still focus so much on the download piece of it, because that's still where the majority of our business is. But streaming is really an interesting one. It's growing at a faster rate. Last year it grew 25%, downloads grew 10%, which is still kind of a reflection on...
To give people an idea, streaming's probably maybe 20% of our revenue from Beatport.
Yeah. But it's only been going for 5 years or so, and so it's still somewhat in its infancy. And for all the things you just said, is part of the reason why it's not had that sort of faster adoption curve. In terms of like who our customer is, they need it sometimes, right? And most of the time, people are using it to discover music. So at the original design of it, and I was at the company consulting. So when we launched HYPE, we also launched streaming service. We designed it originally so that instead of this kind of really awkward discovery process of the short 2-minute sample that you have, and as a DJ, it's like, sure, you can pick out the hook, but you also need to know, like, is it going to fit with the other records? You can look at the BPM, you can look at the key, sure, but until you maybe even try the record in a set, you won't really necessarily
No, that's
know.
absolutely true. I buy loads of records and some of them just never make it into my USB because I've bought them because they sounded great on the day, but when you mix them, it just
doesn't feel right.
It just doesn't feel right. Yeah.
So the streaming service was designed so that people could, at home or in their studio or whatever, try out a whole load of records. And because we know with DJs, if they find records that they like, they buy them.
Yeah.
And sure, there's a pocket limit to whatever they can afford, of course. But, Verity Mays, who works with us, she's a sort of globe-trotting DJ, and she will say, if I find 10 records that I like, I'll buy 10 records. If I find 20 records I like, I'll buy 20 records.
Absolutely.
It's really that simple. And again, if you think about like our role in all of this, we don't own the repertoire. We serve both the DJs and the record labels, and all we've got to do is connect the two together. And if we can connect them really well together, the whole thing works much better.
Yeah, that's true. So that leads me on to maybe one of the criticisms I've got, or one of the sort of things I find frustrating about Beatport. I sort of feel like sometimes I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with the stores.
It's okay. like all good relationships.
Yeah, so, and we spoke about this briefly before, and you told me something really interesting about the curation team. So I find sometimes that maybe the genres don't, from a label point of view, where the records go, what a curation team sees about genre, I don't agree with. And also sometimes the store can feel a little bit more like a magazine, where it's sort of repping what's cool rather than what is maybe useful to me as a DJ who's not playing like an uber trendy basement party for 150 people.
Sure. Yeah.
And what do you say to that? And tell us a little bit about the kind of methods that you as a company are using to like improve curation.
Yeah. So the genre changes is the number one question asked at conferences by the audience. And it's a really interesting one. Genres are subjective anyway.
Yeah.
If you ask an American what they think of, house, it's potentially different to what a European would answer as.
Definitely.
So you've got a little bit of that going on. I think that our success has been our curation, and because that's how people find records. Yes, there's search, but ultimately, if you're crate digging, it's like any good record shop.
Yeah.
You're kind of trusting the people that run the record shop to know what to put in front of you so you sell more. And that's our goal, sell records, right? Otherwise, what are we doing, right? So if we're changing a genre, it's because the curator genuinely believes that it will find more success on a different genre page. So they will move it, and that process is the curators will just go, yep, that record's not for me, and they will send it to the curator they think is the right curator for that record. And that's honestly our process. It's no more complicated than that. We think we're putting records in the right place. That's all.
So there was one thing you mentioned to me before about curators have to have a view of their genre. So there was something that happened if a curator hadn't supported a record, but then that record went on to be successful within the charts. There was some that somehow that you had that was a metric that you were watching, basically.
Of course, because the charts are sales charts, so they reflect what the audience, and again, tastemaker DJs. 58% of our customers are working jobbing DJs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they reach an audience of I've forgotten the number, but a lot of ears every year. But so if they're buying records that we're not curating, then something's very badly wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we try and balance is, and it's a really hard thing, right?
Yeah.
You've got a curator who's listening to records and they think, yeah, that's a really good record. I think the audience will like that. If they then go and choose and buy other records because maybe external marketing, then our curator is probably not, they haven't got their ears to the ground,
yes,
should we say. And so we have to monitor that in the same way as you monitor anyone's like job performance, I suppose. What are the KPIs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as militant as that, but it's just it's a sanity check.
Yeah. So is there maybe a danger then with the genre changes that could be a little bit of gatekeeping going on within the genres?
No, because it's to achieve the same goal, to sell records.
Right. Okay.
Right. If let's face it, if one curator passes a record to another curator and they go, oh, that's awesome, and they feature it prominently on their genre page and it finds success and it moves up the charts, it'll also move into the main chart on the homepage, right?
Yeah.
And then that's where you have the sort of the big success. So we're honestly trying to just do the right thing. I mean that. Like,
No, I'm sure. I'm just curious. You see genre changes and then there's no support. So it's sort of like, why didn't it stay where it was? Anyway, I know there's loads of labels. Like you said, it's the number one thing that you get asked at conferences.
All the time.
People, it's a big bugbear for a lot of DJs and producers. And again, that's just why I was asking the question, because people want to, if this is available online, then maybe less people are going to harass you about it at conferences.
But arguably, unlike other DSPs, we're quite accessible as a team.
Yeah.
We are at conferences. You can come and chat to us.
No, that's very true.
A lot of people like yourself has a direct line. Our CEO will pick up the phone and have a chat with you. Not necessarily about genres, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But we have a head of curation for that. And I've seen Raf get on the phone numerous times to talk to a whole range of different people, just to have a chat with them, see what's sitting behind their dissatisfaction. We think we get it right, but we don't always, sure, but we try to.
And just one thing about curation before we move on. So the general feeling I get, and from talking to a lot of DJs, is that they mainly buy the charts and buy the DJ charts. Do you feel, does that ever feel like a failure of curation, or is that just a natural human instinct?
No, the charts typically lag the previous week's curation. Right, because if it's curated and it then sells, and then it ends up on the chart, right? So it's normally should be that way round.
Yeah.
No, the charts are a reflection of the success of records, right? It's a sales chart.
Yeah.
And if there's a match between, again, it comes back to what you said. We are monitoring what the curator is picking and what's selling the best, and we try and keep that level, somewhere even, right? And so. If something, again, starts to go wrong, it means that the curator's off and the audience is saying, no, these records here.
Right, okay.
So it's symbiotic in its relationship. And so, I think, look, again, you made the assertion that we're a monopoly. If we are, it's not because we're rubbish, right?
No, I
Do you
wasn't
see what I'm saying?
I
Like
was saying,
it's
I
like
was saying it was getting close to that. Obviously, you're not a monopoly. There's other players in the space. It's just that you're so successful that it becomes
right.
close to that. I wasn't, that's
So the success, I think, as a generalization
Yeah.
of the company is a reflection of how right we are versus how wrong we are.
yeah.
That's
No,
that's
I
how I see
completely.
it.
I think you are 100% more right than wrong. So.
Excellent. You heard it here first.
Right. Okay. So I'd like to move on to like AI and tech now, and how Beatport specifically is using it. For example, if I go on to Spotify or any other DSP, I'll get playlists that are specifically made for me, and it would be wonderful if I could log into my Beatport account and see a deep house genre that was specifically curated for me based on my purchasing behavior. What kind of plans have you got for AI, and what are you using it for currently, and what have you got in the future?
So the good news is, if you go onto your Beatport account and log in, there is now sitting under My Beatport the recommendation section. If you click the little eye icon next to the title, it'll describe what's in that box. And
Right. Okay.
What's in that box is it's sort. Is it AI, ML, or an algorithm? I don't know. I think
I've seen that. Like, this is what we based on what you've bought. Here are some new tunes that are out this week that you might like.
They've added something to that, and that's the first phase of an element of personalization that we are bringing to the store. So we recognise that there is a somewhat of a limitation, and we've talked about it. The fact that you've kind of only got curation or the charts, and pretty much it. I mean, there's DJ charts that you can it's like our version of non-editorial playlists. So there are other things you can do.
Yeah.
But yes, that personalization piece, we recognize that we've probably missed the trick over the years to really surface records that might fit for that individual.
Yeah.
Because everybody's different, right? DJs will consistently play across genres, right?
Yeah.
So,
and also some producers, like there's some producers that make music right across genres. I'm a big fan of Sebastian Leger, and sometimes I'm like, my goodness, I've got to look in this genre now to find his new record, because it's like, and so stuff like, things like that happen.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow artists and DJs and labels, right? So you can sort of tailor further that it's not just based on buying habits, it's also based on what your interests are. So we're gathering all of that information together. We, over the last not few years, but over the last, I guess, half a decade, we've been, getting much better at putting data into a data lake so we can actually access that for, everything from our own business analytics through to these products that you'll start to see rolled out on the store. But yeah, that very first one is already live on the store.
Great. And then I'd like to talk about mobile now as well, because Beatport's got a great app, but one thing I've always found frustrating is you can't buy any tracks on it, or you can't purchase. Any plans for that, and what's the reason behind that?
Yeah, so the reason behind not including it at the moment is perhaps people don't know this, but when you put an app on an app store, if you then want to sell anything through it, whether you want to buy it or sell in-app purchases, the marketplace that enabled that app to be distributed will take a fee. Think of it more like they're a shop, right? It's just that they're a sort of shop on a shop in our case, right?
No, that totally makes sense.
So there's something like a first year 30% loss, right? And so we don't think that's a great thing for record labels and artists, and also I don't think we currently have it in all of our agreements. So the kind of the workaround that we came up with was when you're in the app, you can add to a playlist, but the whole site is mobile responsive, so you can just flip to your browser on your mobile and purchase if you really wanted to there. But also, do you really want to download the track?
No, but it's more like I wouldn't want to download. I wouldn't want to download it to the phone, but it would be good. It's just, I guess it's that. So now knowing that that's the issue, rather than waiting for it to become a feature, then sort of use the app as it is and use playlists to sort of think, right, okay, let me add that to a playlist, and then I can, when I log in on the browser, I can just go to the playlist and click to buy the playlist, and that makes sense. So that's like,
because at the moment you can use our our DJ app on your phone to sit when you're on the train or whatever, sit with your headphones, hopefully not one of these people that doesn't use headphones on public transport. Pet peeve. But you can sit and you can literally mix records, and if you're a subscriber, and discover music and just continually add things to a playlist. So but then when you are back at your laptop, desktop, when you then want to go and purchase and download and put on your USB stick, it's designed that way. Have we done the best job of communicating that? Maybe not, but some of that you'll also see starting to change and evolve as we get further into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think now I understand it. It makes perfect sense. Before it just seemed like, oh, that's a bit frustrating, but like from a label point of view, that's great. I would much rather people were in some way forced to go to the desktop, and it's just trying to figure out how to make that process as kind of simple and as so that people understand and obvious that's what it's there for. But that makes perfect sense now. All right, so now I'd like to go on to something that's close to our hearts and, well, my heart anyway, in DJ music production, which is sampling. And when DSPs first started, or when things started to move digital, I had this worry that the ability to use samples as a producer would be diminished. Everything was going to get caught. Algorithms would pick up when you've used a sample, and you wouldn't be able that kind of white label culture that existed within record stores and DJs wouldn't exist anymore. But that's really not panned out that way. It certainly has for Spotify and some major other DSPs on the streaming side. I don't see many records which I think are kind of suspect, or I'm not sure how that exists. And for me, that's because Spotify's takedown process, if a copyright owner objects to a record on Spotify, it pretty much goes off the store, and it's you, as a provider, you can't put that back on until you've come to an agreement with the other party. Whereas Beatport's process is slightly different. Do you want to maybe explain that process, how your process works, and then can I also ask, is that intentional?
God, yeah, I would love to think some of these things are intentional sometimes. So what you're really referencing, I think, is technology evolution. So yes, things went online, and there were all sorts of problems around piracy and all the rest of it back in the day. And then we kind of hit on this problem of copyright infringement happening, en masse. And so the reaction of the tech and music industry was to create tools that could automatically identify any infringing audio within a particular upload. Beatport's 21 years old. Have I mentioned that? Yeah.
Yes.
And we do have a little bit of legacy tech debt.
Right, okay.
And if you look back to when Beatport launched, and it's still true to this day, every single label on the site, somebody, a human being, has looked at to see whether it's a real label, a trustworthy label.
Right, okay.
And so
in terms of AI, there's no AI labels, or there's as far as
we're aware.
So very different from some other DSPs, which I won't mention.
Yes. So, and look, we have a slight advantage in that we're also genre specific.
Yeah.
And so you can't just make mood music and stick it up. It won't go.
Yeah.
So we sort of, I think, been very lucky and fortunate in the mechanics of being both niche and also having had a much more human hand as to what actually even exists on the store. Yeah. I think that I know that we are updating that and changing that. One of the things that you may have seen is TuneCore and DistroKid go live on the store.
Right, okay.
We've just added Symphonic Starter. There's Zebralution's Music Hub. And we're working on another one at the moment. And
so are these starter distributors that with it can get into...
Right, so these are now independent artist distribution companies.
Right, okay.
And so their clients aren't record labels like yourself that understands or even knows the word copyright. They are just music creators, right?
Yeah.
And if they're young, they're likely to be of the mind of... when I made Level for Warner, I referenced it as it was built for the YouTube generation where instant gratification was key, i.e. make something, upload it, goes live, right? As you know, in distribution and record shops, there's a bit of a process that goes on in terms of curation and delivery and all the rest of it. So for these independent artist distribution companies, what we do is we channel everything through the AMP Suite technology that we bought, because that has inbuilt into it some of the checks and balances because we're a distributor. And as you said, Spotify and Apple and the bigger DSPs, they already have copyright audio checks that they're doing. So we need to have them as a distributor. So what we did is we used the same audio checks for Amp Suite that work for Apple and Spotify, and we used that before the repertoire ends up on the Beatport store. So and that's why it doesn't go directly into the Beatport store, because again, the store's 21 years old. We are rebuilding as fast as we can a lot of that legacy tech.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we don't currently have is the audio copyright checks and AI checks, but they are being added. That's part of this next phase.
Great, that's fantastic. So you'll have the things that will flag up percentage AI music, for example.
AI music and copyright infringement, yeah. So that will start to happen. And one of our responses to that, because what you're talking about is the reason why dance music exists in the first place. It's a derivative form of music. Sampling is at the heart of why the music form exists.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did with our sister company, BeatSource, recently was, and it's revolutionary, we went to the major record companies and we said to them, we've got an idea. You understand that this music form is made up of samples of your music, largely.
Yeah.
We'd quite like to legitimize that. Can we come up with a scenario where you will allow, and it is at the moment, a small cache, it's about 100 producers. Some of them are very famous, like James Hype, and then you've got just trusted producers, people that we genuinely know who they are, and we actually have a billing relationship with, because what we said is they're allowed to take any parts of records and make a new record. Now, the ownership remains yours based on a sort of share basis of what was in the record. And a small, tiny percentage will go to the person that made it.
Yeah.
So now we're legitimizing bootlegs, essentially. We call them DJ edits.
Right, okay.
Because,
brilliant.
Again, like DJs will do that. They will literally just make a brand new MP3 just for themselves for the performance piece. So let's build that into what we're doing. So it's in its early stages at the moment. There's only a few companies that are signed up for it, majors and indies. And as I say, it's an experiment. It's only for streaming on BeatSource at the moment.
Right, okay.
But we wanted to sort of try it, test it, see if it worked. It's been incredibly popular.
I'm not surprised. It's very much like what Apple have done with DJ mixes, and they've legitimized DJ mixes, so you can if you're a DJ mix supplier to Apple, you can put anything you want. I can make an edit of, I could put my Fleetwood Mac edit into a DJ mix, and it'll all get all the money will go to the right people, and I won't have to worry about it.
That's exactly it. And I like the fact that the industry, it may be slow, but it is evolving and it is maturing, and I think we're seeing greater acceptance of things that quite frankly happen anyway. And it was like, how can we make some money out of this? Because we should.
No, I mean, it's much better that rather that it goes on SoundCloud and people do free edits on HYPE or whatever people do to get attention for their edits, that the person who's made the sound recording and the songwriter get compensated properly. So it's a great I think that's a great innovation, and I'm excited to see it sort of roll out,
it took years to both come up with a model and actually implement it and get it live. Yeah.
So, but the one thing I was talking about before was if a copyright owner has got an issue with something on Beatport, they'll send a DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright notice. And then the person who's uploaded the alleged infringing copyright will have 48 hours to respond. And if they respond and say, no, everything's fine, then the content stays on Beatport. And that was the kind of the difference between what other DSPs do. And it does allow, I mean, you've got to be fairly ballsy if you've sampled something to then to go, no, I've got the rights. But then as the rights owner, the sort of next level thing you have to do is to take that person to court, which can cost you up to like 10 grand to take something to court. So it kind of puts a barrier to the record stays on Beatport, but if it gets to a certain level, then we will then take it to the next level. So it does allow for this kind of low level white label sampling. And you've already answered it, saying I wish we could take credit for some of this as sort of foresight, but it's just the process that's in place.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that 99% 90% of the time, if somebody puts a copyright claim through and it's a legitimate claim, because
Yeah.
they're not always.
Yeah.
Some people will just
No, those
say that they own something and they don't.
No, Toman had his record taken off of Spotify recently, and we spoke to Solid Grooves, and it was like a nefarious claim. Someone just, I don't know, someone was just jealous or didn't like it, or like took the hump or whatever, and he just stuck in a claim.
It's amazing what goes on, and I think I guess the fortunate thing is that at least with Beatport, you're always going to be dealing with a human being. There is a technical system that's going to just, like if you're doing a Instagram live, performance, it might just shut your feed down, right?
Yeah.
Because some form of automatic, copyright thing is kicked in and just stops it. We don't have stuff like that. So, so there's an advantage, and it does allow for licensed repertoire to be used. I mean, as we said earlier, this is how the music was created in the first place. For example, so we've got to allow a level of that to work. But I mean, you've got to own the repertoire or have permission to use it. That's
I mean, I think it's the best situation. There's no perfect situation in this time. I think there's definitely, I see labels that have taken advantage of the situation and have sort of, for example, the funky house genre. I feel like there's a lot of
I don't know what you mean.
Well, for me, I see a lot of records in there that are maybe suspect, but maybe not doing enough volume to trouble anyone at any of the legal departments, because I'm pretty sure things like ABBA plus Lady Gaga in a mashup are not going to, having done an ABBA sample myself, and I know how difficult it is to clear an ABBA sample, I'm pretty sure those things don't exist. But that's that's a byproduct of this ecosystem. You can't sort of police. You have the ecosystem set up in the way you do, and you can't police for every eventuality.
That's right, and there's also nuance in that, right? So if somebody has re-recorded something, but they're crediting the songwriter and the publisher, and the publisher and the songwriter will get paid. That's how that functions, and you've not actually infringed the master. Now somebody might come after you still anyway. Okay, but it's the same process, right? It's, you've either got a license and everybody is agreed, or you're doing something slightly edge case, and then you might get caught.
You're no different from Noel Gallagher, really, who's sort of doing the same thing with Beatles songs. It's like, it is what it is. Anyway, sadly, I would love to keep talking to you. We're coming towards the end, so we need to kind of wrap up. And so I like to end with 2 questions that I ask every guest. So you get to go, the first question is, you get to go back in time and speak to the young Alex Branson just as he's starting that first job at Sony. What's the one piece of advice you'd give him?
I think it would just be, don't give up. I mean, it was kind of in my head, anyway, but if you really want something, you can achieve it.
I think that's so true. I mean, you need resilience in this business.
Really do.
The desire not to give up has got to be strong.
Yeah, so many times where I've come close, I'm sure. but no.
Yeah, me too. I get it. Yeah. And the other question, and so because if we're asking DJs and music producers, then it's normally like it's their last DJ gig. But because you can have either question. So you can either be a promoter that's curating a party, it's your party, or you can be a DJ. Which question would you like? Do you want to be the DJ or the party curator?
Probably the party curator, because if I pretend to be a DJ, this is like suicide for my career.
Okay, so we're having a big anniversary party for your years in the music business. You get to pick the club and the 3 DJs that are playing. What are you going with?
Yeah, so, okay. I, being of the vintage that I am, don't get to go to clubs as often as I would like. And I'll just sort of generally answer this. I really enjoy going to venues like Printworks. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah.
Every year, my favourite clubbing experience, such as it is to do, and again, this is very on brand, I apologise, but the Dalt Villa event, IMS. I genuinely believe that is one of the most unique experiences.
It's a beautiful location.
Beautiful location, best DJs past and present in the world. Everybody's there for the right reasons to have a good time.
Wonderful weather, open air.
It honestly is. It's such a favourite. Like end of IMS for me, I'm talked out of business. I stand right at the front, or right in the VIP bit, but I stand right at the front, and people will try and talk to me, and I'll be like, it's good, isn't it? And just carry on dancing.
Great. So-
That's my favourite place.
And who's playing?
I am afraid I will hark back to some of my early memories of the reasons why I got into this. I remember seeing Paul Oakenfold play at the home in Leicester Square, and that honestly was one of the most captivating sort of DJ sets I'd ever seen.
Amazing.
And that, that was, I guess, the 90s. And also a similar sort of era was, because I used to work for Lynn Cosgrave at Incredible at Sony, which is where it all kind of began for me. And she ran the Bedrock Nights at Heaven under Charing Cross. And watching Sasha play was just like
next level,
intoxicating for me. And so that's two, right? I guess, I don't know, something slightly more nerdy. I always used to really enjoy watching Satoshi Tommey play. I just think he's
wonderful
unique,
musician,
different,
great DJ.
100%, yeah.
Well, that is an excellent selection, Alex. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thanks.